So it's about time for us to start. I will go on and begin the introduction as people are filing in. So first off, I'd like to welcome everybody back for the second day of the SEALS conference. And we're going to kick off the day with a plenary address by my fellow student and colleague, Pittayawat PITTAYAPORN, who I know and always refer to as Joe. No offense meant, but Joe and I went to the same university, and he graduated after me. So in Chinese, we would call him my Xuedi. No. So Joe got his PhD in linguistics at Cornell in 2009, and now he's associate professor at, and I'm going to try to pronounce the name of the university, Chulalongkorn University in Thailand. And he works on historical linguistics and phonology, and quite a diverse array of topics, including tone changes, language contact, reconstruction, phylogenetics, language and prehistory, metrical structure, intonation, and language and metrics. And if we look at some of his recent publications, you'll get a very good idea of the breadth and diversity of his research program. So he has some recent papers on things like Moklan orthography and some contact papers like Malay influence on Moklanic languages, reconstruction, so reconstructing the human genetic history of mainland Southeast Asia. That's not even linguistic reconstruction, it's very interesting. And the reconstruction of Thai tones, of course. I associate Joe particularly with tones. In fact, I'm a syntactician, but I've come across some of his work in tones. So I think if even a syntactician who does no phonology has come across his work, citations to his work, that really is a credit to his being a very well-known and respected linguist. And the last thing I'll say here in that regard is that he is considered a leading linguist in the area in his field. He has a chapter in the languages and linguistics of mainland Southeast Asia on the typological profile of Kra Dai languages, and also an entry in the world's major languages, the Routledge compendium on Thai languages. So he has a very broad and diverse research program and is a very highly regarded expert in this field. Sorry, delighted to have him come and give his talk today on language contact in the convergence of Kra Dai languages towards Sinitic prototype. So let's welcome Joe.
So, thank you very much, Edith, for the very warm introduction. Um, so, if you would like to have access to the slides, you can scan this QR code and you have access to it. I think we need just turn that and close the tab later. So it is an honor to be here today at the 33rd annual meeting of the Southeast Asian Linguistic Society, to meet familiar faces and also to meet new people. Thank you very much to Xiao Juan, my old friend from 2005. I think that's when we first met at SEALS in Australia. Thank you for the honor, for giving me the opportunity to be speaking here, and thank you all the staff who has made it such a wonderful thing. How do I get to the presenter now? Okay, thank you. Cool. Okay. So Cursor is not. Thank you very much. So today, so my talk today will be a synthesis of what I've been working on. As Edith mentioned, I've I'm easily distracted, so I've been working on many different things, but they actually, sorry, the cursor is not moving. How can I move? How can I?
Because they oh, so the presentation screen actually is right here.
Oh,
Excuse me.
okay. So
It's so warm. Sorry, therefore it seems.
okay.
Oh,
Okay. So so it's so I'm very distracted. So I've been working on different things, but I think they somehow are connected. And what we are going to see today, what we are going to talk about today, is a synthesis of what I've been working on in the past 2 decades. So today I'll be talking about how Thai language, how Kra Dai languages how Kra Dai languages, how Kra Dai languages of mainland Southeast Asia have come to be typologically very similar to Chinese. You may all know that Kra Dai languages are spoken in mainland Southeast Asia. It's spoken on Hainan Island to the east and ranging and going all the way to Assam in India to the west. And in the north, it goes up as far as Sichuan, and in the south, it goes to the north of Malaysia. It's a diverse groups, estimated to have around 91 member languages spoken over 81 million people. These languages are divided into 4 main groups. So Kham Thai, Kham, which is further divided into Kham Sui and Thai. So these are one of the 2 main groups, and the better studied one. We also have the Lai language, the Lai group, and the Kra group. Most of these languages are spoken in China, as you may have seen. Although we have also many languages are spoken in the Southeast Asian Peninsula. They represent only a fraction of the diversity of Kra Dai languages. With regards to the deeper affiliation of Thai, there are 2 main ideas. So either Sino-Thai or Austro-Thai. It has been a debate since the 19th century. I'm not going to get into the details now, but specialists in the field now think that Austro-Thai is the most likely hypothesis. Without getting into the detail of the debate, I'll take the Austro-Thai hypothesis as the starting point. And as we go along, looking at the cases, you will see why Kra Dai languages should not be considered sister to Chinese, but how they have become very similar to each other. So typologically, Kra Dai is very homogeneous. So all languages have the same SVO basic order. Usually we have post-nominal modifiers like adjectives and possessives comes after the noun. We have numeral classifiers, although we have variation here. Some languages have pre-nominal, some languages have post-nominal classifiers. The languages are all analytic, monosyllabic, mostly. There are a couple of so-called sesquisyllabic and polysyllabic languages, and they are all tonal, which make them very much like Sinitic varieties represented by Mandarin here, and very different from Tagalog, which I'm showing here as a representative of the Austronesian family. Contact as an explanation for the similarities between Chinese and Kra Dai has been around for decades, since at least the 1940s. The most explicit account, the earliest explicit account is by Benedict in 1942 in his seminal work on Austro-Thai. In all account of the similarities, we see insights by scholar like Benedict Diller, Matisov, Zhang Junru, and Yang Min, as well as Nita Pai. They all point to contact, borrowing of lexical items, and bilingualism as causes of these typological similarities. However, there's a big gap. In Southeast Asian linguistics, we usually, in Southeast Asian linguistics, as in other subfields of contact linguistics, usually when we talk about language, we compare similarities and we try to explain it in terms of replication. We may talk about how the features clusters, but there's a big gap, especially in Southeast Asia, on how the features spread. We know that they spread by contact, but what are the actual processes involved in the spread? How did Kra Dai languages become typologically like Chinese is a big question. And my talk today is not going to be a very empirical talk. It's an attempt to explain the typological similarities with a theoretical lens, which is the variationist approach to sound change, to language change, which basically says that language change starts as a linguistic variation. So in languages, we have orderly variation, orderly pool of variation. And when the distribution, the frequency distribution of the variance in the pool of variation changes, then you get change in progress, which will eventually lead to complete changes. In contact-induced change, new features from the source language is viewed as an innovation. So recipient languages replicate features from a donor language and incorporated it into the pool of variation in their own speech community. And as time goes by, the innovative variant takes over and becomes the new norm. As schematized here with the new pronunciation of SU, fu, being introduced by contact, and then it becomes more widespread due to sociolinguistic factors and becomes the default or the norm, the primary variant. Then we can say that language change has happened. To make it clearer, I will have um, a hypothetical scenario of how contact-induced change might have happened in Kra Dai, in contact with Chinese. So if we take Kra Dai and Austronesian to be related, the word for five in Proto-Kra Dai might have been something similar to Lima in Proto-Austronesian, and Limu is my reconstruction, tentative, but it's tentative. So after contact with Chinese, the Kra Dai speakers may have replicated the Chinese word, the old Chinese word for five, nga, as ha. There might have been phonological adaptation because the languages were not identical. So they had to change the form of the word a little bit. But the important point is that at the very beginning, the Chinese version, the Chinese variant was a minor variant. But as time goes by, due to prestige of Chinese, ha became more frequent and mu became less frequent and then dropped off. So now the prototype word for five is ha with tone C, which is a Chinese loan word, and that's the word that we use in all Thai languages nowadays. So today I'll start with historical settings. We'll learn a little bit about Chinese history for those who, including myself, who just who had to read Chinese history for the purpose of this talk. And then I'll discuss four cases. If we have time, we'll discuss four cases, but not we'll keep one for question and answer. So we'll look at shift of modifier orders, development of classifiers, emergence of contrastive aspiration, and tonogenesis. Okay, so we'll begin by examining the historical context of contact between Kra Dai and Chinese. We'll focus on the area located between the Red and the Pearl rivers in southern China, which Catherine Churchman calls the Two Rivers region. This region has a fascinating history of Sinicization, a process of cultural and linguistic assimilation that affected languages in the Chinese Empire, in the Sinosphere. And the time frame for the contact between the beginning of Sino-Kra Dai contact started during the Qin dynasties, when they after Qin Shi Huang conquest of southern China into 14 BC. When we look at Thai languages, we'll see traces of this early contact. So we see loanwords, Chinese loanwords in Proto-Thai dating at least to the Han period, to the early Han, Western Han period. So what's relating to agriculture, like rice seedlings and goose, nature, belief and society, like the word for shaman, soul, these are all Chinese loans. Human and animal body also, number and trade and technology. The contact continues into later Han period and early Middle Chinese, and that's when the intensity of contact peaked. So we have a number of loanwords in similar semantic domains like agriculture, the word for duck, the word for yoke, the nature like elephant and sand, belief and society, human and animal body, number, and trade. So these are all Chinese loans that we see in Proto-Thai, which are traces of Sino-Kra Dai contact. after the early Middle Chinese period, we still have loans from Chinese, but they are not reconstructible. So I tend to believe that prototype was formed, prototype started to diversify into its sub-branches in the 7th century CE. Okay, so the Qing conquest initiates Sinicization. Han settlers arrived in the Two Rivers region. The territories were partitioned in colonial administrative units. Crucially, it was when Chinese writing system was imposed on the population down in the Two Rivers region. Then comes the Han Dynasty. They weren't very interested in the south, in the Two River regions, because they didn't find a lot of economic or strategic value in the area, but they did have alliances and tribute trades with the indigenous people of the area, especially in the vicinity of the imperial centers. In the Wei Jin period, in the 3rd to the 5th century, we see increase in strategic importance of the Two River region to the overland route from Vietnam to northern China. There's exchange of products, so gold and silver from the Two River regions, and also trade of forest products like ivory, rhinoceros tusk, etc. Contact probably peaked in the northern and southern dynasties in the 5th and 6th century. We see increased trade of forest products in exchange for salt, iron, and pepper and copper, growth of local chiefdoms, bestowal of Chinese administrative titles to local chieftains, increased adoptions of Chinese surnames, and very importantly, Han migrants were marrying into local families, taking local customs and becoming local leaders. So you have a lot of admixture between Chinese speakers and indigenous Kra Dai speakers in the Two Rivers region. So if we take the historical timeline suggests a steady increase in contact intensity over roughly 7 centuries from the Qin dynasty to northern and southern dynasty. In Thomason and Kaufman's framework, we can think of the Qin dynasty as a beginning, as a kind of casual contact. Then contact kept increasing and peaked in the Jin and the northern southern dynasties. In Thomason's scale, it would be considered a very intense kind of contact with change in a shift in overall typological profile. And then when we look at the data when we look at the cases, it seems to support this timeline. I'm showing this timeline until the northern southern dynasties and the Sui, but as you know, contact with Chinese continues to present day, and we'll look at cases of more recent. We'll look at more recent contact and try to make sense of the past. How what we learned from present day contact can tell us about the typological convergence back in the first millennium. The first case we'll look at is the shift of modifier order. I'll show how replication of typological features in Chinese serve as a source of innovation for changes in Kra Dai languages. So, as I said, most Kra Dai languages have post-nominal modifiers like dog, black, not black dog. But that's that's a simplistic generalization. When we look at descriptions of a wide variety of languages, we'll see, in addition to post-nominal cases, we see languages that have variable orders, like you can have pre or post-nominal modifiers, depending on the person or on the style of talking. And you also see languages like Biao, which doesn't have that variability, but have a split pattern between post and pre-nominal classifiers. So in Biao, you have modifier head order when the modifier are possessives, quantifiers, relative clauses, and determiners. But head modifier pattern for nouns and, well, verbs here. By verbs here, I meant stative verbs and or adjectives in corresponding to adjectives in Western languages. And then prepositional phrases also have head modifier order. So this is an example. So, หมูตุ๋ยหมูตุ๋ยหาย your shoe, you can see that the possessive comes before the noun. Okay, but if you look at the third example, black pig, it's not mukki, it's ki muk. So black comes after. So you have a split pattern in Biao. Interestingly, in all cases of languages that have pre-nominal modifiers, it's usually introduced with associative markers that are borrowed from Chinese. So either ti, like ti in Shi Tong Kam and Mao Nan, which are obviously from Southwestern Mandarin, ti, and te in Mandarin. And you also have, but in Biao, you have ge, which is most likely from Cantonese sky. So I think it's clear that post pre-nominal modifiers are recent borrowing from Chinese because they copied both the markers and the order. But that's a fixed pattern in Biao, but in other languages we do see variation. For example, in the Zhuang dialect of Tianteng in southern Guangxi, you see variations between post-nominal and pre-nominal classifiers. For example, for an honest person in the second example, you say 跟老 set, or you can also say 老 set 的跟. So you can have either way. You can put relative clauses in front of or after the head. Like in this example, you have tu văn hóa lên lên cân lên ma. Văn hóa lên lên cân lên ma is a relative clause and it comes after, but you can also have relative clause in front of the noun, like kia ok by ti, that was married off. When you have the associate marker ti, the order becomes pre-nominal. The pattern becomes pre-nominal. So this is clear that this is influence from Chinese. What's really revealing is the word lao set. Lao set can be lao set tiken or gun lao set, and its stylistic variation. Very much like what we see inside that Thurgood reported uh, a few decades ago. So it's stylistic variation connected to formality and also structural factors like how long the modifiers are. So by examining Biao and the Tian Teng Zhuang dialect, we can propose a scenario for how shifts in modifier order change might have unfolded. So first, bilingual speakers replicate prenominal modifiers from Chinese, using it in stylistic variation with the native postnominal orders. And then the prenominal variant might have become frequent in certain structural conditions like when like possessives and when the modifiers are long. And then the prenominal variants may win out in more borrowable conditions. And finally, it generalizes to the less borrowable conditions. So the modifiers order is completely shift. Tian Teng Zhuang is probably at stage 2 and Biao is at stage 3. I haven't actually found a case of stage 4 of the shift. So it would be interesting if we see that, but that would need a lot of pressure from Chinese, I think. So to summarize, modifier order differences reflect stages in the typological shift, which was started by replication of structures from Chinese, which become an innovation in the pool of variation of the Kra Dai speech community. And then with the new structure gaining popularity due to prestige of the donor language, we have a typological shift. The next case we'll look at is the development of classifiers. Some Chinese linguists have suggested that emergence of classifiers in Chinese might have been influenced by Thai languages, but it doesn't seem to be the case. Let's first look at classifier order in Thai. We have some languages have post-nominal classifiers like Southwestern Thai languages, including Thai and Lao and Shan. These are the ones spoken further away from China. Most of the languages have pre-nominal classifiers, and these are the ones spoken in China and Vietnam. Interestingly, Zhang Lu Kam and Shi Dong Kam are closely related, but one has a post-nominal order and the other one has a pre-nominal order, and it's Shi Dong Kam, which is more innovative in other respects too. So maybe this suggests that the post-nominal order was the norm in Kam as well. So in Zhang Lu Kam, we have pre-nominal order Y Chak Tang, one stool, but the corresponding sentence in Thai would be Tang Nung Tua, Nung Tua being the classifier phrase which comes after the noun. And Tang is a Chinese loan word. It's an old Chinese loan word. When we look at classifiers in Kra Dai languages, you will see that they are very diverse. They don't share the same phonemes. And many of them are Chinese loan words, including the Thai word for the Thai classifier for animal. So Tua is from To in Chinese. And To was a very common Chinese classifiers at the initial stage of the classifier development in Chinese. You have things like Zhu in Biao, which probably comes from Zhi, in in sorry in Kam you have Jack, which probably come from Zhu as well, but from different stages and different dialects of Chinese. When we look at prototype reconstruction, we can see that there's only one classifier that the three people working on classifier reconstruction agree. So that's the general word for the general classifier and the other classifiers are either cases of grammaticalizations, like blade being grammaticalized classifier as classifier for tools in some northern Thai languages, or you get some of them are loan word like pen, which is also very common among Thai languages, but that's probably a 10th century loan word from Chinese, pian, for a flat object. So now, with the importance of Chinese in the history of classifier in Kra Dai languages, let's look at the classifiers development in Chinese. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm also new to Chinese historical syntax. So classifiers didn't exist in Old Chinese, and the initial stage of classifier development was probably in the 2nd century before the Common Era. The original way of telling number is simply number and noun. But in the Han Dynasty, we started to see uses of classifiers. The most common classifier pattern is now numeral classifier, just in southwestern Thai, just in Thai and Laos. We did see numeral classifier now order, but very restricted. And then after the Han period, the original numeral now pattern kind of dropped out, and the now numeral classifier becomes the default with a restricted use of numeral classifier now pattern. And from the 7th century during the Tang Dynasty, it's the now numeral classifier that became more frequent and replaced the old now numeral classifier pattern. So you see that in the crucial stage, in the crucial period, historical period when Kra Dai and Chinese were in contact, there was a lot of variation in Chinese regarding classifier order. So what might have happened in Kra Dai languages, and I have to stress that it didn't happen once. It happened in individual groups or individual languages separately. In some cases, it might not have been there more than 500 years, for example. Like in Kra languages, this is my way of thinking. So at the beginning, during the first millennium, Kra Dai speakers may have been very familiar with the variation in word order in Chinese. Thai proto-Thai or pre-proto-Thai speakers may have borrowed the most frequent pattern, which was the now numeral classifier pattern. They might have also borrowed other patterns, but not in comparable frequency, and that now numeral classifier pattern became generalized, and it spreads in the Kra Dai speech community and it became the norm in Thai languages, especially in southwestern Thai languages. But in other languages, We don't know whether it used to have the numeral classifier pattern or not, but it might have taken a different path. So they might have replicated the the numeral classifier now pattern when they first when classifiers first emerged in these languages, or they might have had the old pattern first, and then in later stage they switched to the newer pattern. We don't know that, but you can see that the variations that existed in Chinese and probably also in the Kra Dai speaking communities among Kra Dai bilinguals were reduced differently in different languages. So classifier system probably arose separately in Kra Dai languages through replicating Chinese patterns. In Proto-Thai, we only had a rudimentary system with variable positions, probably. Over time, some variants disappeared, reducing variability and leading to fixed word orders after the noun. Southwestern Thai likely adopted this strict post-nominal order due to Chinese influence during the Six Dynasties. That's when classifier orders became the norm. Classifiers became the norm in Chinese, and then other Kra Dai languages became strictly prenominal due to later contact with Chinese, which they have been in the past 2 millennia. The next case we'll look at is phonology. Let's switch gear a little bit. We will look at emergence of contrastive aspiration. So in Austronesian languages, aspiration is not a big thing, but in Thai languages, Thai in some Kra Dai languages, contrastive aspiration is well established, and this has to do with bilingualism and attitudes at the time of contact. So if we look at Kra Dai languages, you could see that aspiration is very common, both in the borrowed and native vocabulary. And that's probably not how it was at the beginning. I'll come back to this later. In my reconstruction, sorry. But if aspiration was not part of Proto-Kra Dai, how did it come about? Usually when we borrow words, we usually adapt its form to conform to our phonological system, right? We have loanword adaptation. But in a case when the sociolinguistic setting is permissive, we can try to be authentic, try to be faithful to how the words are pronounced in the donor language. So according to Matras, this can happen in a situation of convergence in stable bilingualism. So in this kind of situation, L1 forms are systematically adjusted to match those of L2. In this case, Kra Dai languages adjusted words in their own language to match Chinese forms. And it's only happened when bilingualism is intensive and widespread and the donor language is prestigious. So let's look at a modern day case before we go to how aspiration arose in some Kra Dai languages. So this is a low study on Standard Zhuang, which is spoken in Guangxi today. Standard Zhuang it's kind of artificial, but it's based on the northern the Northern Thai dialect of U Ming. One prominent feature of Northern Thai languages is the lack of aspiration. So when Thai people from U Ming, from the north of Guangxi, speaks Mandarin, they older people don't really have aspiration. So they are stereotyped for that. And I think it's the coming of Mandarin that changed the landscape, changed the situation. Before the 1950s, not many people actually understood standard Mandarin. They may have understood Southwestern Mandarin or Yue dialects, which they call Baihua. But it's not until the 1990s that Mandarin became prominent, gained momentum in Guangxi. It was required in primary and secondary schools. It was used in all kinds of public sectors, including arts and literature. And most importantly, with the booming of Chinese economy, Mandarin became an important tool for economic prosperity of the people. So Mandarin is now taking some places that used to be some functions that Zhuang used to have, Zhuang vernaculars used to have. In northern Zhuang dialects, including standard Zhuang, the standard way, the normative way of adopting Chinese words with aspiration is to de-aspirate them. For example, the word for district, chu in standard Zhuang is supposed to be yi, but nowadays some people, instead of saying yi, they say ki, and this process of adaptation is very productive. We can see cases of hypercorrection, overgeneralization. So the word gudong, antique, should be gudong, and it doesn't have any aspiration in the Chinese form, but sometimes it's pronounced gutung with aspirated t. That's hypercorrection, which suggests that Chinese speakers are conscious, Zhuang speakers are conscious of the prestige of aspiration in Chinese and in speaking Zhuang with a Chinese accent. There's a little pilot experiment by Qin Xiuhong. They asked Zhuang speakers she asked Zhuang speakers to pronounce words that are Chinese words. The speakers had to read characters and they had to pronounce it the Zhuang way. And people with lower Mandarin proficiency have had fewer cases of aspirated consonants. So you can see that proficiency really affects how aspirated consonants in Chinese are pronounced in Zhuang. And you can see what I want to show here is increasing prominence of aspirated consonants that comes with increasing proficiency. When we look now, what we learned from Zhuang can be projected back to earlier stages. So let's take Proto-Thai, for example. Proto-Thai didn't have aspirated consonants, at least in my reconstruction, and also in Fatlu's reconstruction. He had aspirated consonants, but he said it's allophonic. Proto-Southwestern Thai, on the other hand, had a well-established series of aspirated consonant, per, ter, ch, ke, and probably ka, I'm not sure, maybe not. But Anyway, how did the aspirated consonant arise in Proto-Southwestern Thai? So there are two sources. Of course, Chinese loanwords is one important sources. Like the word for to break, po was borrowed as pa in in Thai, right? And another source of aspirated consonants is CR cluster. So an aspirated consonant followed by an R became aspirated, like Kra for limestone mountain became Kra in pre-Proto-Southwestern Thai, but in Proto-Southwestern Thai, the R dropped. The R dropped out, so you actually have a single aspirated consonant. So how did aspiration became phonemicized? Well, at the beginning, po pronounced pa in late Han Chinese and early Middle Chinese. When it was first borrowed into Proto-Thai, speakers were probably pronouncing it with or without aspiration in a kind of stylistic variation. But as Thai speakers were gaining influency in were gaining fluency in Chinese. Aspiration became the aspirated variant became the norm because of the prestige associated with speaking like the central elite. So with the generalization of aspirated per in Chinese loanwords, you get a minimal pair between pa, which was borrowed from Chinese, and pa, which was the native word. So you start having minimal pairs with aspiration. In the second stage, then pra, which used to have allophonic aspiration due to the presence of r, you get pra, the aspiration becoming contrastive because the adoption of po from Chinese. Then the previously allophonic aspiration in pra became contrastive, and in Proto-Southwestern Thai, when the r dropped out, pa really became contrastive. And so you can see how aspiration spread from loanword vocabulary to native vocabulary. Okay, so to capitulate, intense contact with prestigious Chinese during Northern Southern Dynasty led Thai speakers to emulate Chinese aspiration, creating a kind of stylistic variation. Due to intensive and widespread bilingualism and positive attitude toward Chinese, Thai speakers might have attempted to replicate the original Chinese pronunciation. Existing tendencies for aspiration in native clusters aided the adoption of aspirated sounds from Chinese loanwords. Eventually, these loanwords became established with aspiration and triggered phonemicization of aspiration in Thai, which also led to previously allophonic aspiration becoming reanalyzed as contrastive in the native vocabulary as well. So that's the case of aspiration. I'm actually told that time is up. I didn't get to tonogenesis, but if you have questions, we can talk about it later. It's more speculative than the other three cases, so we can talk about that later. Thank you very much.